Dan, talk about what you saw from Bo last week against the Giants. 3 quarters of bad football, and then one of the best quarters that we've seen a quarterback play. What was the difference between that fourth quarter and the first 3 quarters?
Yeah, I mean, 3 quarters of bad offensive football. I don't have but 3 quarters of Bo being really bad. Stoke, I'd say this, early on in those first 3 quarters, I could give you 4 things that were more, quote unquote, to blame when it comes to the end result of performance rather than the quarterback. I mean, how many drops did they have? Shoot, 6, 7 drops that were just uncharacteristic, multiple clips of poor pass protection. I'll continue to say it. If you're going to offensively in Denver, throw the ball to the perimeter, play out there, you better learn how to block. I mean, there's just some terrible performances blocking on the perimeter by a bunch of different guys. I think Bo, once or twice took a sack that I'm like, Bo, you can't take that. I thought he did a nice job with his legs multiple times. So for me, I'm like, he's 4th or 5th for where I'm looking at is why the performance isn't where it is. And then really, I think what happens at the end of that third quarter drive that goes into that fourth quarter is obviously the legs were a huge part of that story. 1, scrambles, but 2, them designing and utilizing them. Number 2, they started making plays on the football. That was a big deal as well, as giving guys the chance to make the one-on-one. Empty, they got into empty a little bit more. Mims made a couple plays. So I think overall you love the fact. I think it's got to be a learning example for Denver coaches offensively. Great coaches, right? But there has to be a little bit of accountability to the others. And then there has to be a handcuffing or taking off of the handcuffs early on for Bo Nix and allowing him to impact the game earlier rather than, quote-unquote, easing into the football game.
Hey, Dan, when you watch this offense and you mentioned the perimeter blocking, there were receivers who just flat out, refused to block.
Don't even try it.
That refused to block on the bubble screens, on the tunnel screens, things that just, you watch it on film and you're like, Bo has nothing to do with that. At what point do you say, as a coach, hey, man, this ain't working, I got to change things up. I can't call this anymore if my guys just aren't going to do it?
Yeah, I think Mark, for me, it would be, conversations of, are you willing? I've got to figure out if you're willing to do this. Now, if you're willing to do it, and I would imagine most guys are, right? It's a team.
Yeah.
Then why aren't we getting it done? And if we're not getting it done because we're coaching it the wrong way or we're teaching it the wrong way, maybe we're putting you in bad matchup situations where, the physicality of somebody else on the perimeter, there's a reality, big guy beat little guy. Are we not in the proper situation or leverage? And then the last part I'd be is, hey, if you're not going to get this done, then I'm going to find somebody else to get the ball to. It's a little bit of, if you want me to throw you the ball or build some stuff in for you on the perimeter and try to get you the ball and play making space, you got to do the job for other people as well. I can't ask this right tackle to bust his ass down the line of scrimmage to go pin a corner that's chasing you in man coverage so you can catch this receiver screen and go for 50 if you're not going to bust your ass for Marvin Mims when we throw him a bubble screen just because you don't want to be physical enough. And so there's a reality of, hey, man, everybody is important to all of us being good on offense, not just you get yours when you want it. And so everyone's an adult, everyone's a big boy, and if you get to that point and it's past that, then there's got to be a little bit. But I mean, Mark, schematically, you like that stuff, right? I mean, space is space. You're trying to, build it, and I think it's an important part of offensive football right now.
Visit with Dan Orlovsky, but Dan, why all those screens? Why is Sean calling so many of those screens? My theory is he knows it's important to run the football, but he knows his team can't run the football, and this is a way to try to sort of get running type plays or running type gains out there to start drives. What do you think? What's the reason for so many of these screens?
Yeah, I mean, so one, there's not a lot of defenses that have the perimeter players that can take away those cheap yards. Let's call it what it is. They're cheap yards. And so any coach that has a semblance of a brain wants cheap yards. They're easy. So there's not a lot of teams that have the perimeter players that can handle defending those cheap yards. And that's really directly attached to the nickel and then the corners. Do Teams don't have guys that are really big enough and physical enough to do it. I think the second thing is, and I'm giving a little bit of grace to Coach Payton here, is if you told everybody or asked everybody, what's the strength of the New York Giants defense, they would say, well, their defensive line. So why would I bang my head against the wall trying to run the football at them? If you asked everybody what's the strength of the New York Jets, they would say Quinnen Williams in the interior part of their defensive line. If you asked everybody what's the strength of the Philadelphia Eagles, now they're a team that can handle the physical perimeter play, it's their defensive line and Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis. So matchups matter, and what is the strength of a defense, what's the weakness of a defense. So I think there's a little bit of game plan element to it, and there's a little bit of there's just not a lot of teams that can handle those cheap yards on the perimeter.
Dan, talk about how tough it is offensively when you don't have the threat of a vertical passing game. I mean, they don't get the ball down the field hardly at all.
Yeah.
There's no threat of a vertical passing game. Talk about how difficult it is for everything else to be successful.
Yeah, so the way I always kind of, for people at home to understand it, I always think of it like an accordion. And when you have vertical speed, it makes that accordion expand. And so there's a greater area for you to call plays with. And when you don't have that vertical speed, that accordion doesn't expand as much. Everyone always asks, why is it so hard on 2-point plays? And I say, well, you have to design a play that gets a minimum of 3 yards, but it can't get 13. And so it's a little bit like that, where you're trying to call plays, and if you can't, extend the top part of the defense, you're trying to call plays that can attack 8 to 16 yards. That's a very small window of space that you feel that you can go after. These backers and underneath defenders are long, they're athletic, they're playing deeper than they have been in the past just because of styles of offense and gun-centric offenses. And so when you don't have somebody that can widen that intermediate window and make it bigger, it's just a tighter window. It's a tighter window for routes, it's a tighter window for a quarterback, and no longer can you throw guys. It's not really about the depth of the defender. It's really about the width of the defender, and those are just shrunken windows for quarterbacks.
As you assess Bo Nix in his second year, and I think we have this, feeling like, oh, he's going to be Drew Brees, and that Sean Payton has talked about him being an elite level quarterback here in the next year, top 5 quarterback. Just where do you think he is in the development process from the film that you've studied?
Yeah, I think Bo is, on a week-by-week basis, playing good, consistent football. He has not taken a meteoric jump. And I don't know what is that meteoric jump? He's been really clutch in 2 big-time games, really 3 big-time games. He has not given the ball away at an alarming rate. He's on track to throw for, close to 30 touchdowns and 10 picks, QBR right around mid-90s. So I really think I'd like him to be a little bit more completion-centric. I'd like him to use his legs early in football games a little bit more, but not as a crutch, but a necessity. I think they should get him into the football game a little bit more. So, I think Bo's kind of right where he needs to be. The interesting thing with him and Sutton is they're not throwing the big in route. We've talked about that. But I also don't think he is as aggressive to Cortland early in games as he is late in games. He gets to a point with Cortland where, he's like, I have to force him the football late in the half against the Bengals, late in the game a couple times. And so I think, I think he's kind of right where you want him to be. He just has to, this goes back to me, handcuffs off. I want him to come out with a little bit more of an aggressive mindset, still calm in his operation, but more of an aggressive mindset.
Dan, last hour we talked to our buddy Joel Klatt, and Joel said that he believes some play callers are quote, vanity play callers, meaning they want to justify all the work that they put in Tuesday night, Wednesday night, and all the work that they put into their play sheet, and they sometimes get caught up in trying to justify that on game day as opposed to calling the game that's unfolding in front of them. And he said that Sean at times strikes him as a vanity play caller. Do you see that as well?
Yeah, I would say that Joel's comments are fair. But the only thing that I would say about it is, listen, these coaches are spending all this time figuring out these ways to attack a defense because that's their skill set. You know, like I haven't been around a lot of coaches. Now, I've been around some really good ones. I've been around some bad ones that are, you know, grinding on Tuesday and Wednesday night trying to design plays, and they're just designing plays. There's a rhyme and a reason, specifically a coach that's been as great and accomplished as Sean, to the why. Now, there are coaches, and Sean could fall into this category where it's like, I'm getting this, you know, every coach has, not every, a bunch of coaches has this little part of their game plan sheet where they mandatory call. Like you figured out you love this scheme versus this coverage or this situation, get this dialed up. And you don't want to go out of a game with like almost with timeouts. Like, oh man, we had these 2 or 3 plays that we thought were going to be great against what they did, and we didn't even call them. You know, and so these coaches are trying to figure out ways to attack that defense that week. And there's a box in their call sheet that you have to call these. These are the 3 or 4 plays in these situations we got to call. And I think Sean's probably in that group. And, you know, a lot of times they work and at times they don't. But I don't think it's this. And I don't know if I don't mean to say Joel's implying this. I don't believe Sean's going, I want everyone to see how smart I am on this play call, thinking, well, it might work, it might not. I always believe there's a rhyme and reason to Sean's play calls.
All right, Dan, great stuff. We love it every single week. We look forward to it. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of your football weekend.